The ICC Hall of Fame is meant to represent cricket's ultimate accolade. But does it really? Beneath the polished surface lies a web of contradictions, biases, and baffling inconsistencies. So what truly defines a legend? And does the ICC Hall of Fame live up to that definition? To understand the cracks in the Hall of Fame, we have to look at its structure. On paper, the criteria are clear. A player must be retired for 5 years and meet benchmarks. 8,000 runs or a 50-plus average for batters. Another criteria for inclusion is scoring 20 centuries or more, 200 wickets with a strike of under 50 in tests, or 30 in one-day internationals. For captains, there are criteria such as leading in over 25 tests or 100 one-day internationals with a win rate of 50% or more. Not so fast. The criteria are inconsistently applied, and in many cases, players who don't meet the thresholds still get inducted. The inclusion of players like Barry Richards, with only 4 test matches to his name, this stands as a prime example. Apartheid in South Africa cut short his international career, but his stellar first-class record led to his induction. While his story is somewhat tragic, does it justify bypassing the statistical criteria that most players are held to? A significant number of the 122 inductees do not meet any of these thresholds. The reason is a special case clause. This allows for the induction of players who had a fundamental effect on the history of the game, even without the stats. This loophole renders the objective criteria almost meaningless. This inconsistency is exposed when comparing inductees to those left out. England's Graham Gooch was an inaugural inductee in 2009. Once England's top run scorer was inducted into the Hall of Fame. 8,900 test runs at an average of 42.58. David Gower, also inducted in 2009, scored a sack full of runs. 8,231 runs at 44.25. Now, let's examine an even better player in VVS Lakshman of India, who has not even been considered. Just look at his superior stats. 8,781 runs in 134 tests. Superior average of 45.97. He backs this up with a legacy including match-winning performances against the dominant Australian team of his era. We found more examples. Mohammad Yusuf of Pakistan had a test average of 52.29, scored 24 centuries, and has 9,720 one-day international runs. Yet, he remains sidelined. Let's look at another great, Zaheer Abbas of Pakistan, who had to wait until 2020 to be inducted. With a far better test average than Gooch and Gower and an objectively better statistical record than Richards, why did it take so long to honor one of Pakistan's finest? The conclusion is inescapable. Players with statistically superior records are made to wait or are still waiting. This is not meritocracy. It is a clear case of selection bias. These omissions are hard to justify. It's obvious that 3 big nations dominate the Hall of Fame, namely England, Australia, and the West Indies. As of 2025, these nations account for 85 of the 122 inductees. This leaves only 37 spots for players from all other test nations combined. At one point, England alone had more members than the entire continent of Asia. This imbalance began at the Hall's inception. The ICC absorbed the first 55 inductees from a list created by the Federation of International Cricketers Association, the FICA. That foundational list was overwhelmingly dominated by players from England and Australia. Since existing Hall of Famers are part of the voting electorate, their inclusion creates a self-perpetuating cycle of bias. Voters are naturally more familiar with players from their nations and eras. This has created an institution that reflects the sport's colonial history more than its global presence. The administration's own carelessness reveals a more profound problem. In February 2024, the official ICC Hall of Fame website incorrectly listed 3 of New Zealand's greatest cricketers, Sir Richard Hadlee, Martin Crowe, and Debbie Hockley, as being Australian.
That is really cool, and I just felt very humbled and very proud.
Their profiles featured an Australian flag, and New Zealand was entirely excluded from the website's nation menu. Such a mistake is not a minor oversight. It demonstrates a shocking lack of care that fatally undermines the institution's credibility. If the ICC cannot accurately present basic facts, how can the public trust its opaque voting process? What makes the Hall of Fame even more puzzling is the special case clause. Players who fail to meet the statistical benchmarks can still be inducted if they're deemed to have had a fundamental effect on the game. This clause seems to have become a loophole that dilutes the importance of stats altogether.
Oh no! Matthew Hayden's gone.
The selection committee can induct players based on their perceived contributions to the game, which are often difficult to quantify. While this clause has its place, it allows for subjective decisions that compromise the credibility of the Hall of Fame. For instance, when Vinu Mankad was inducted in 2021, despite his mediocre statistics,
great bowler indeed, great action, easily the finest Indian left-arm spinner ever. For me, it was such a huge honor and a privilege to play with him.
It seemed as though his historical significance as a pioneering all-rounder was enough to justify his place. But is that really what a Hall of Fame should be about? So what does it actually take to be considered a cricketing legend? The ICC Hall of Fame selection process is a mixture of factors, but they are applied in an inconsistent and often opaque way. Statistical excellence. While meeting the numerical thresholds is important, it's not a guarantee of induction. Country of origin. Players from England, Australia, and the West Indies appear to have an advantage. This reflects cricket's historical power dynamics. Players from the modern era are more likely to be selected, overshadowing cricket's early greats. Perceived impact. The subjective assessment of a player's influence often trumps their actual numbers. Leadership. Success as a captain, especially in ICC tournaments, carries significant weight. Special circumstances. External factors like political issues or early retirement can work in a player's favor.
Oh! That went in the air, but it's away to the boundary again.
Popularity and narrative. Players with compelling personal stories or public appeal seem to have an edge. In the end, the Hall of Fame seems to honor not just cricketing excellence, but also the narrative surrounding players. This narrative, however, is often subjective and inconsistent. Despite their exceptional career, some legends are waiting. Here is a short selection of players we should look out for. Harbhajan Singh retired from all forms of the game in 2021. He was a phenomenal front-line off-spinner for India. In tests, he recorded 417 wickets in 103 matches at an average of 32.46.
Catch it is the call, that's got to be gone.
He also achieved highs in one-day international cricket with 269 wickets from 236 matches. A lethal fast bowler from South Africa, Dale Steyn, will probably go down as one of their best ever quick bowlers.
Yes, he is!
In 93 test matches, he took 439 wickets for an average of 22.95. His exceptional figures also included 26 5-wicket hauls and 5 10-wicket match hauls.
There it is.
Edged, and that is the end of head. Steyn gets the early wicket.
In one-day cricket, he took a respectable 196 wickets from 125 matches at an average of 25.95. A West Indian superstar post-2020, Chris Gayle, has captivated the cricket world with his ability to hit big in all formats. In tests, he scored 7,214 runs from 103 matches at an average of 42.18. His limited overs record was even better.
Make that just another 6.
In his 301 matches, he scored 10,480 runs at an average of 37.83 and a strike rate of 87.19. Chris Gayle, who retired from international cricket in 2021, will soon fulfill his provisional eligibility. The ICC Hall of Fame in its current state makes no sense. It's riddled with inconsistencies, biases, and loopholes that allow for questionable selections and embarrassing omissions. While some inductees unquestionably deserve their place, the system fails to uphold its promise of objective recognition for cricketing greatness. The selection process should be re-reviewed. For the Hall of Fame to have any meaning, it needs a transparent, consistent, and fair selection process. It must find a way to balance numbers with context in a way that is clearly explained. Until then, this institution will continue to appear nonsensical to those who examine it closely. Did you like this video? Well, you're gonna love the next one. Just check out this next Cricket Crafters compilation.